welcome back to the third ever episode of the Heartbreak Chronicles. Thank y'all so much for being here once again. Uh, like I said, this is the third ever episode. We're still just getting into this. It has been quite the journey so far, and I am so very appreciative of every single one of you that has checked out my social media pages, has checked out the podcast itself, and has, listened in. And it truly means a lot. So thank y'all so very much. Um, I am Nessa, your host, and like I've been kind of saying at the beginning of every podcast so far, I am just doing this to kind of help, I guess you would say, overcome a recent breakup, but also like overcome myself. Uh, everybody goes on healing journeys. I feel like life is kind of like a constant healing, healing, because every single day we're going through something that, can better ourselves in the long run, 100%. So, this has been a platform that I've been utilizing to just kind of, get my voice out there, get my, just all the energy out, whether it's happy energy, negative energy, just this is my platform to express myself. And with that being said, this is also a platform for my viewers to express themselves. I want this to be a community of those that are going through their healing journey or have even overcome their healing journey and maybe is on another journey for themselves. And we want to hear your stories. Because, like I always preach, your story deserves to be heard. It truly does. Even if you are, at peace and you're content with your life, advice is always needed. So do not be afraid to reach out to me. Do not be afraid to share your voice and to share your story. So that is what we're doing here on the Heartbreak Chronicles, just kind of talking about life and relationships and everything in between, and just like yourself, how we can love ourselves and to be our best selves to ourselves and to others, right? So that is the ultimate goal. And yeah, thank y'all so very much for being here. um, so like I said, this is the third ever episode. The first and the second episode, we had covered attachment styles. That was the very first episode. And then the second episode, we discussed boundaries and the different types of boundaries and how to keep boundaries up and why they're important to keep up. And if you haven't seen it, definitely go check it out. They're good starting points on being able to understand, why you're attached to certain people the way you are, or why you are the way you are, honestly. And then it also gains you an understanding of, again, the importance of boundaries and why they need to be up, and to protect yourself and to protect your mind and your peace, right? So, this episode is kind of going to bring all of that together and just caveat off of, attachment styles and boundaries. And I will say that the main getaway from those two episodes, if y'all decide not to watch it, which is completely fine, the main takeaway is finding ourselves again. That is the main takeaway. I've been giving out homeworks every time. The first week was to do something for yourself, to, enjoy your presence. The second was to honor a boundary that week. And so this episode is going to explore more into that. And we are going to be talking today about self-sabotage and what that looks like, what that will affect later on in our lives, and like how we can stop self-sabotaging ourselves. And I will say the main thing with self-sabotage is it does tie into the attachment styles, it does tie into boundaries, because if we don't have those in check, it's going to lead us to the path of self-sabotaging ourselves, right? So before I get into the nitty and gritty of self-sabotage, I do want to disclaim, like I've been doing every episode, I do not edit my videos because I want us to be our authentic selves. I am human. I am not perfect. It is what it is. So if I mispronounce, because I will say last episode, I kept saying, what was I saying? Pretty much, I was mispronouncing something like crazy last episode. And yeah, it happens. And I know that might not be professional, but again, we are human. I mispronounce, I stutter, I maybe say the wrong things, but this is the beautiful thing about having an audience. So y'all can, correct me and let me know, and then I can move forward with that. Um, we're human. It happens. Uh, so now that we got that disclaimer out the way, let's get into the episode, guys. So, self-sabotage. This can look like so many things. And when you say self-sabotage, we think of people that are like, just, at least in my mind, I think somebody that's like super depressed, doesn't want to maintain relationships with people because they feel that they don't deserve it. They don't do things for themselves. They like sabotage. They like are like a turtle. That's what I had envisioned initially. But digging deeper through my healing journey, I have realized that I have self-sabotaged myself so many times. And self-sabotage is the destructive, turtle like vibe. That is a like a chapter, I guess you would say, of self-sabotage. But self-sabotage can also look like when you overgive to people. And we did talk about that in the attachment styles from the first episode, how, you are so like fixated on wanting somebody to stay that you will overgive yourself to them. So you like will do more than what you have the capacity for. And that could look like, um, you have a bunch of homework that you need to do for school, or you have a bunch of spreadsheets you need to make for work, but you're going to push that to the side so you can cater to your partner or your friends or your mother's or family members like needs first, right? So you're catering to somebody else. You're over giving yourself to the point where you're not giving to yourself. You're not balancing it. So that is a way of self-sabotaging, because you're self-sabotaging your priorities over somebody else. Um, that kind of is hand in hand with people pleasing. Sometimes we overgive to people please people. People pleasing is a form of self-sabotage. Okay? People pleasing is a form of self-sabotage. And this could look like, it kind of reminds me of the movie Yes Man by Jim Carrey, if y'all have ever seen that movie. If you haven't, kind of the background of that movie is Jim Carrey is just a really like by the books, like kind of just not too happy of a guy. And I want to say he goes to like almost like an AA meeting, and they're like, say yes to everything. Say yes to everything, even if it's bad. So like, I know I'm not saying to that extent. So in that movie, he'll say yes to things when he actually kind of means no. But granted, the movie kind of shows how beautiful that can be, but it also becomes destructive because you keep saying yes and yes and yes when you should be saying no. But you're like in this habit of like wanting to make people happy that you're like, oh my God, what chaos did I create for myself? And that is a beautiful movie that kind of like demonstrates that. So people pleasing and overgiving is going to destroy you more than anything. That is more than likely the outcome. It's not going to give you a better relationship with somebody. It's not going to make people like you more. Because how can people like you when you don't even like yourself? So that is another form of self-sabotage. Another one, this is something that I have personally really struggled with significantly, is self-silencing. Meaning, let's say, especially in a partnership where they might talk to you a certain way, but in your head you're like, oh, that's just how they communicate, or oh, you know what, I deserve that. and your mind kind of twists where you're like, I'm not going to speak up for myself. I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to, sit here and just let it simmer. I've seen that also within like my relationships with family members, especially if you've grown up in a home where your voice isn't honored. Uh, that can also, carry on to your friendships and relationships later on in life because you're used to your voice not being heard. So you just stay silent because that's what you think is best for you. No, and that is a current journey that I am on personally. It's starting to get better of speaking up. Like, I'm not okay with that. And again, we talked about that in boundaries last episode of like what we determine is okay and not okay, and how we need to like express that and make sure that they got that in their head to not, overstep a boundary or to not make you silenced. So, yes, when you silence yourself, you are self sabotaging yourself because, again, your voice deserves to be heard. I cannot express that more. Okay. Um, Also, there is another way to self sabotage. It is called hyper responsibility. Pretty much, this means that you feel responsible for others. So, let's say, I don't know, one of your friends um, got into a car wreck. They're okay, but their car is like destroyed, and they're like relying on you to, take them places. Maybe they even needed to borrow some money to cover like costs or whatever. They are relying on you, and you feel responsible for them. But baby, you are not their parent. You're not. You're not their guardian. Granted, help a friend when they're in need, but when it's to the point of them taking advantage of you, that's a no go. It's a no go. So just keep that in mind that, you know, you might, that might just be who you are as a person to like, take care of others. But when it's like to the point of like where you're exhausted and you just aren't getting your own shit taken care of, you're self sabotaging. And like I did say in the last episode, I want to say there is the exception of like if you are a parent, because I truly believe that your child, once you have a child, they come first more than anybody else in this world. Unfortunately, you have to put your needs aside and put them first, right? Um, and there are ways to balance that, which I'm sure we'll discuss later on in episodes. So if there's any mothers or fathers, I would love to have y'all on the episode because that is something that I can't relate to. But I do tell myself that if I ever have children, they are the main priority, right? So that is the only extension or exception of the hyper responsibility because you're responsible for your kid, but you're not responsible to keep people's emotions in check. You're not responsible to be a financial stability for other people. That's not your responsibility. Do not self sabotage yourself for others. Okay. And then So the last two ways of self sabotage is kind of like what I had envisioned meaning self sabotage. It's avoidance and then pushing people away. So a lot of times, like I don't know about you, but at least the last individual that I dated, they would love to have the excuse of like, I self sabotage myself so much. And that pretty much them saying that to me, they were just saying that they have a tendency to, pull back when a connection starts to feel vulnerable to them. And granted, childhood traumas, ways that you grow up that can lead to, people not trusting another human with their vulnerability. So 100%. But again, that is self sabotage. That is something that you need to work on yourself. Your partner cannot help you get there. Friendships, when somebody feels that they are not good enough to be friends with another person, especially maybe they were bullied in school, or you're always second guessing yourself of like, I don't deserve to be at this table. You're self-sabotaging yourself because you fucking deserve to have that plate, to have your silverware, and to just eat it up. You deserve that 100%. You deserve every right that seat at that table, okay? So that is self-sabotaging when you do not feel worthy enough. Um, yeah. So that is a very toxic behavior. That right there. The first like four ones, the overgiving, people pleasing, over self silencing, and hyper responsibility. Those ones are fixable. Like I would say, like you're like in the middle. You know what I mean? You're in the middle of getting to where you need to be. But the avoidance and the people pushing, you're like at the very bottom, but you know that there's still like you can do it. It's just gonna put in a lot more work. You know what I mean? And before we get into the work being put into not self-sabotaging anymore, is kind of we need to understand the psychology of self-sabotage. Why the hell do we do it? Why do I push people away? Why do I give myself and give myself? Why do I put people's needs above my own? And the base of it is fear. The base is fear. We have a fear of conflict sometimes where either we want to avoid conflict, so we either overgive or we shut down. And that's where like the avoidance of people pleasing get in, or excuse me, pushing people away. Uh, we shut down. I have a huge tendency to do that when, like, especially with my ex partner, when we would get into arguments, I had a tendency to just shut down. And again, a lot of that is childhood trauma. Growing up, where your voice isn't honored, I would just shut down automatically because it's like, what's the point? I like, and like sometimes I get so like worked up that I can't even express myself because I want to cry or I get choked up. So I resort to shutting down. Other people, again, they overgive, so there's a conflict. They're like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Well, I'll do this and that to please you. Because we're so fearful of having to, be headstrong and to sorry, I'm trying to find the correct word of pretty much when you yeah, where sorry, there's an exact word, but yeah, where you confrontational. There we go. To be confrontational. So uh we also have a fear of being judged, right? So this looks like when we hide our needs. So we don't want to tell our partner or our friend, like, this is going on in my life and I really need this, that, and the third, because we don't want them to judge us. We don't want them to look at us differently. And because maybe we're scared that they won't understand us. But the beauty of relationships, y'all, is two different people coming together and being able to like learn from one another and understand each other. So I think we sometimes forget that, or we just don't know that. So we do hide our needs. We don't express our needs because we don't think they matter, but they do matter. They do. Because that's just going to be an unhealthy relationship at that point. And then also the fear of being judged is also when you avoid closeness. So instead of just not, speaking up your needs, you just avoid it altogether. Like that's why I don't have a lot of friends. That's why I don't have a partner, because I don't want to be judged. I don't, speak up at work. I don't raise my hand in class because I don't want to be judged. Well, sorry to break it to you. People are always going to judge. If you just walk past the street, somebody's going to be judging you. But like we've talked about in the last episode of boundaries, that is their problem. You have to put that boundary up of just not giving a fuck. You have to put the boundary of that person feels that way, but I'm not going to let them overstep and get to me. Okay. So that would be like an emotional boundary for yourself. And yeah, so far we have a fear of conflict and a fear of being judged. We also have and this we talked about in the first episode, is everybody, for the most part, I feel like has a fear of abandonment. We just despise it so much. Like, what do you mean you're leaving? What do you mean you're going? What do you mean you're just going to the store? I don't want you to leave. Some people, it's not to that extent, but like there are severe cases of, you know, of being so attached to somebody. So the fear of abandonment looks like people that either cling to the person, like where they're like, you're going out with your friends? Okay, I'm going too. Or they'll want to be in the bathroom with you. Or they just follow, like, that is like an extreme case of clinging. But they also will cling to you. Let's say there's the conflict going on and y'all are arguing, and your partner wants to leave you. They're maybe even degrading you, but you're still clinging to them, like, don't leave me, don't leave me, because you have that fear of them leaving, when you should be more content and think to yourself, you know what, that person doesn't deserve to even be in my life. They can go, they could get on out of here. um or the fear of abandonment is the opposite of clinging, where instead you push them away. You will be the first to leave instead of them. You want to make sure and ensure that nobody leaves you, so you always have the tendency to leave first. And that is another thing that I feel that I struggled with, especially in my teenage years, because I moved around so much that I had this tendency where I didn't want to become close to people, or especially like relationships, being in relationships with people. So I would like maybe date people for a few months and then I just leave. Wouldn't say anything, wouldn't give them a reason. It was really shitty on my part. Really shitty, but it was because I had this fear of abandonment. I thought to myself, I'm going to leave them first before I have to move away and they decide to leave me. Which is not healthy at all. I do think a lot of us military folks do have that struggle. Um, we feel that we need to end things before they get serious, because whether it's your career, your lifestyle, you just want to make sure that you're the one that does it first so that they don't. Because it's like you have this pride thing, or you just have like this, again, the fear of just like them breaking your heart. So those clingy and pushing away first, those are extremely not healthy, because again, you're self-sabotaging your own needs. If you like somebody and they make you happy, make it work. If somebody doesn't make you happy and treats you like shit, don't make it work. You gotta say deuces and get on out of there, okay? And the last type of fear is we have this fear of vulnerability. People just don't like opening up, especially in this generation. I feel like us Gen Zers, like, yes, we're more vocal with speaking up and speaking out, but I feel with Gen Z we also, like, people just aren't as vulnerable anymore, because social media, it's like everything is on social media, social media, social media. But when have you actually sat down and had a real ass conversation with somebody, instead of, you know, texting about it or posting about your feelings? When have you had somebody actually pull you to the side and talk to me? Let me know, like, open up with me. And I feel like if somebody were to do that, we'd instantly be like, whoa, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean open up? Like, um, and so that sabotage could look like a fear of vulnerability is sabotaging the relationship itself before it even gets real. And that is putting everything together, meaning you're going to self sabotage in ways of, even if you're too clingy or people pleasing, maybe you're just doing that to cover up the fact of, like, I don't want to get real with this person. I don't want them to know all my trauma, and I don't want them to know, like, my deepest and darkest secrets. Which, if you're not ready to open up to somebody, don't. But at some point, you're going to have to open up, because this is just something I truly believe, that for a relationship, friendship to thrive, if you have somebody that is really important in your life, and they are opening up to you, you need to reciprocate that when you are ready, but it has to happen eventually, because then the relationship can't grow. The relationship can't go further. It will only create conflict, right? So, yes, the fear of vulnerability. That is another way that we will self sabotage ourselves, because we just don't want to get super deep into it. We don't want to be our authentic selves. Okay. So, like me doing this podcast right now, this is me being vulnerable with you all. This was actually a really like today at least, because things have been so, this past week has been a hard mental week for me. So it was really hard to sit here today and talk, you know. But I'm here and I'm doing it. So we got to be comfortable with being uncomfortable, okay, in order to heal. Because healing is not fun sometimes. It can be really shitty, especially this past week was so shitty. Um, and yeah, so we have to open up, to be able to heal. Okay, so we need to find our communities, we need to find our people, and be safe. So, anyway, so the psychology behind self sabotaging is predominantly fear of conflict, fear of being judged, fear of abandonment, and fear of vulnerability. Okay, so now that we kind of understand the psychology behind it, we are now going to go into like how this can show up in relationships, and not just intimate relationships, but everyday relationships. So with friendships, when you self-sabotage within a friendship, that can mean, you know, disappearing on them. Maybe you won't hear from them for like weeks, months, and that person just is like almost ghosted you. But the next thing you know, they'll reach out to you when they want to do something, or just like because they want to check in. That's, you're self-sabotaging yourself right there if you do that, because you need to maintain friendships, especially that there's a maintenance with that. You have to keep up with friendships. You have to at least, like, you know, especially if you're like long distance friendships, like you have to check in with them, check up on them. um, that's how you maintain them. uh, Also within the friendship, self-sabotaging is like the overgiving, and just like we just talked about, never opening up. Those, you need to have those for a healthy friendship, because then you're just going to be in a friendship with somebody that is just using you, using you, using you. You need to have a friend that is like, what about you? What's going on in your life? Um, oh, you don't have to do that for me. It's okay. Or they do stuff for you. It has to be a balanced relationship. So, friendships, those ones I think are really easy to self sabotage, because friends sometimes come and go, but if you don't want them to go anymore, you need to stop self sabotaging. You need to start changing your ways and letting that person stay in your life. Let them love you, okay? Within family, self sabotage can look like shutting down. That was the one I just talked about. So that kind of is seen in the family setting. You know, again, it's a family member is telling you something about yourself and you just shut down. You're self sabotaging yourself, because you deserve to defend yourself. You deserve to have your voice be heard. And then also within family is when you revert to your old roles. So let's say you leave your family, right? You're out on your own, you're doing really well for yourself, but when you go back for the holidays, you revert back to you know, the quiet, shutting down person, or you revert back to just being this mean person within your family. You're self-sabotaging yourself. Don't let all that effort that you had put in before be destroyed once you are with your family. You know what I mean? Um, Also, a way that we can self sabotage is also in the workplace. Yep, we can have a relationship with work. That is a very important relationship to have. So self sabotaging at work looks like taking on too much work. like we kind of talked about a little earlier. Uh, if you're just really good at your job and you want to maybe get that promotion, so you just keep on taking in stuff that doesn't even belong to you. um, that is self-sabotaging yourself, because then you're just gonna get into this freaking rabbit hole and swamp of like, what did I just do? um, Also, self-sabotaging work is avoiding collaboration. Let's say you need to work with other people and you need to actually open up to these people about your ideas, but you don't. You're just like that nervous kid in the back, which there's nothing wrong with being nervous, but you have to talk. You have to share your ideas, because you don't know if they're good until you say them. Um, so, in the workplace, do not take stuff that's not yours and speak up. You have to speak up in every relationship you have, okay? Because your body and your mind deserves that. Also, social life. So, not like friends, but like just having a social life. So, maybe like people that is like the local bar crew, that maybe when you're at the bar they're there, or maybe the farmers market, or maybe your local like studio for yoga or pilates or whatever. um Self-sabotaging in those environments looks like shrinking yourself. So you're kind of just there, but you're not going to like overexpress yourself. So you just kind of like, or again, that little nervous person that's just there. But like, I understand if it's your first day there, maybe feel it out a little. But if you're like in this community and people don't even know you and you've been there for like a year, that something is not right. That's not okay. You need to get yourself out there. Um, Also, when you keep pushing everybody away from you within your social life. So, like, I think of people that are like, you know, it's always like an old person that is just like, yeah, thanks, or like just takes like, sorry, let me read. Like, I'm playing the scenario in my head, but like, so let's say like you open the door for them and they're just like, you know, like it's somebody that is just like not open to like people's kindness, to people coming up to them and talking to them. Like I am such a big person of like customer service. Like if I'm checking out a store, I love to be like, how's your day going? Oh, like, like I want to get to know them just for a little bit. But like I have noticed, especially on the East Coast, that people are just more like, why are you asking me that? Or like they just won't even respond to you, even if you say hello. Which granted, that's the culture, but they're self-sabotaging themselves, because you're missing out on a possible connection with somebody that could be so beautiful and that can make your day better. But those people are just so unhappy. So if you're one of those people, you have to get out of that habit. Just take that leap of somebody actually wanting to know about you. Don't, turtle up. Don't like defend yourself and get an attitude. You know what? Let them and just see how it goes. Okay. So that's your social life. When you shrink yourself, you kind of hide yourself, or you're just known as the mean bully. Not a bully, but like just a mean person. Um, and then finally, intimate relationships, how these show up. Um, I think we kind of covered most of them, like just kind of talking about self-sabotage. But again, it is overcompensating within a relationship. It's also, again, pulling away when you actually care for the person. So, like I said, my ex partner, um, they, I know that they cared for me deeply, but they would maybe pull away when they weren't comfortable. That is self sabotage. Uh, and then also, this was actually a really good point. So, I was asking a person in my life, like, what is self sabotage within your intimate relationship? Like what have you seen yourself? And this one is actually a really good one, where within intimate relationships, they were saying they've seen self-sabotage where either like you're over giving to the point where your partner is like, who are you? Like, you're not the person I fell in love with. Like, why are you putting me above yourself? Or you are the pulling away person and you just keep pushing and pushing them away, And again, your partner is like, who even are you? Like, you're not the person I fell in love with. You're not the person I wanted to get in this relationship with. So, but when I ask this person in my life, they're pretty much saying that self sabotage to them is when you just sabotage yourself so much that the people in your life don't even know who you are anymore. And that is freaking scary. That is scary. And so when they said that to me, I was like, holy shit, that is such a good point. Like, because that happens. That has happened. Like, it's happened, like, with um my ex relationship. It got to the point where I was like, you're not the person I fell in love with. And and that's when you have to kind of decide, like, I'll write it out and see if things get better, or you have to protect yourself and be like, you know what? Thank you for this beautiful time we had together, but I need to put myself first because this isn't healthy, you know? So I really want to get us all to that point to be able to put our foot down and express ourselves in that way. So we're gonna get there, okay? We're gonna get there. And we can get there by breaking the pattern. Breaking the pattern. So the way to break the pattern, one, is we need to name it. We need to figure out, how do we self-sabotage. So I want y'all to think of, like, how you self-sabotage, right? Just think of, like, your past relationships and, like, what have you done, or what has your partner done or friend done to self-sabotage that relationship, okay? Um and when we are able to pinpoint that, like, for me, mine was like um self-silencing, and also I used to push people away, unfortunately. um and I can acknowledge that. It's not that I'm proud to say that, but I am proud to be able to take accountability for that. And because of that, I am not feeling shame about it anymore, because I am now a different person than I was. So we need to not have shame in the way that we did self sabotage, because the beauty of it is that's not us anymore. That's not going to be you anymore. We are in this new chapter for ourselves, and we get to write our own book now. Okay? So that is a big way of how to break this pattern of self sabotage. Another way is, again, going back to boundaries, is to practice micro boundaries. So this just looks like small limits for yourself to help build confidence. So, for example, this past week, so the homework I gave last week, which I should have said at the beginning, so I'm sorry, y'all. The homework I gave was to um, practice, like, a small boundary for yourself, and honor it. And so what I did was, like, not letting people's words get to me, because I'm a very emotional person. So, like, just one small thing that maybe isn't even, like, their intention, like I said, like, maybe somebody, I open the door and they're just like, you know, that would make me, like, that would ruin my day. That's how sensitive I can be. Um, but instead, I didn't let that stuff get to me this past week. And it was actually pretty nice. So stuff like that, being able to create these small little boundaries for ourselves and honoring it, and that will help build our confidence over time. Okay. So I want y'all to think of just, yeah, like a little boundary for you that you can start practicing. Also, you need to rebuild your self trust, which, if you're here, you're doing it. So I applaud you. I applaud you so much. Pretty much rebuilding your self trust is, finding communities for yourself to feel, wanted there, to, like, basically get yourself out there. And whether that's, opening up a podcast, or watching a YouTube video, or joining a, mental health group, something to rebuild that trust with yourself, to know that you are not alone, and that this is all just a journey. And but you trust yourself, because you know you got yourself through this journey. So pretty much, yeah, just keeping promises to yourself. Like, when you tell yourself, I'm going to get myself here, you make sure you get yourself there. So that's how you can build your trust with yourself. Okay. Also, another way to break the pattern is you need to communicate. You need to communicate, especially your needs. You need to be very clear on your needs to whatever relationship you have with somebody. So again, we kind of talked about that in the boundaries. Like if somebody is overstepping you, like your boundary, if they're overstepping, you need to be clear. Like, hey, you're overstepping. I need you to back up a little bit. Um, you need to be clear on. I don't like when you do this. I don't like when you do that. Or if somebody maybe says something to you that doesn't sit right, you need to be clear. Like, hey, that actually wasn't funny. I didn't really enjoy that comment. So you just need to be clear for yourself to be able to break that pattern, to not self sabotage anymore. Because if you're not clear on your needs, people aren't just going to know and they're going to keep on letting you self sabotage. Or when you're not clear, people are just going to like take advantage of you. They're just going to keep on using and using and using you. So you have to be clear, because if you aren't clear, not only are you self sabotaging yourself, you're letting other people sabotage you then. Okay. And we do not want it to get to that point at all. Okay. Also, a way to break the pattern, this will be the last advice I give for this, is to break that fear. We have to reframe that fear of conflict, of being vulnerable. We have to break those fears. And this could look like, instead of thinking like, oh my God, I'm going to lose them, think of it as, I'm going to lose myself first if I abandon myself. Okay. So we just need to kind of tweak the way that we think when it comes to fear. Uh, do not be afraid of people leaving you, of conflicts. Don't be afraid of it. You have to instead kind of tweak it of, I'm fearful of this conflict right now, but tweak it of, am I physically safe? Am I mentally safe? And do I trust myself? All of those should be yes. If they're not, at least for the first two, gotta get out of that. Okay. But for all three, if they're yes, especially if it's just an argument, but you're like just fearful of it, you have to reframe that fear of thinking to yourself those things of, am I safe mentally and physically? And do I trust myself? And if all of those are yes, don't be afraid. It's just a conversation. It's just a little argument. Okay. Granted, if it is like where y'all screaming at each other, yeah, you need to take some steps back, cool off, but don't be afraid to like have like a civil argument where you're expressing their needs, they're expressing theirs, and then coming to a balanced like solution. Okay, so just reframe that fear, pretty much. That I think will help tremendously. Is instead of being afraid of something, think of like the reality of the situation. Like, okay, if they leave me, I'm not gonna die. It's gonna hurt, but I'm gonna be okay because I trust myself. I'm physically safe and I'm mentally safe. Okay, so yeah, just make sure we have those things in check. Uh, I'm just gonna make sure my phone is still recording before I get into this. And it is. Okay, perfect. I hope it doesn't go out. Yay, it's still recording. Okay, all right. So now that we have covered self sabotage and we have, a broader, not a broader, but like, I guess a deeper, there we go, a deeper understanding of self sabotage, I hope y'all can take that with you today and, start to work on it in the little ways, like how I talked about with breaking the pattern. Address the pattern, take accountability for it, practice breaking that pattern by having micro boundaries set for yourself, okay? And then you have to rebuild self trust with yourself. You have to trust yourself to not self sabotage anymore. You need to communicate yourself clearly to others so you don't self-sabotage, and so that they don't sabotage you. And then finally, you need to take control of your fears. You need to redirect it into something of confidence, of reassurance, you know? So that is how we break the pattern of self-sabotage. Y'all got this. You do. And I want to hear about it. Okay. Let me know. Let me know what you did and how you're, currently working on your journey. So yeah, self-sabotage, guys. Not doing it no more. Mm-mm. That doesn't exist in our lives. No. We are going to self-love instead. Okay. So that sums it up, and now we're at the point of a gentle reflection. Okay. So for the gentle reflection section, I want us to think of the time when we did self-sabotage. Okay, so kind of going back to earlier, maybe even take that, or maybe think of another time when you self-sabotage. I want you to determine if you either self-sabotage from over giving or over avoiding. Okay, think about that. Did you overgive in those moments of self-sabotage, or were you avoiding? Okay, were you avoiding the relationship itself? So think of that, and I'm sure y'all have like a past relationship in mind right now. Okay, you probably imagine yourself self-sabotaging in that moment, and just think of how you were in that moment. Okay, think of how maybe like how your partner or your friend reacted. Think of just what you did, not what you didn't do. Think of what you did in that moment. Okay, and now I want you guys to think of now. Fast forward, okay? And let's say you're in a new relationship, or you're in that current relationship or friendship. Would you do that to yourself and your partner again? Would you do that again to you and your friend? Just think about it. Would you? Okay? And I hope the answer is no. Okay? And when you reflect on that time in your life, this is where we can practice breaking the pattern. Do not be ashamed. Do not be embarrassed. Take accountability. I did that, but what matters is I'm not ever going to do that again. Okay? That's what matters. You didn't do it again, and you're not going to. Okay? So we need to start practicing self love instead of self sabotage. Okay? Stop being so hard on yourself, on ourselves. That ends here. We take accountability for our past mistakes. Okay? And now we know how to be a better person in the future, and that is just such a beautiful thing. Okay, so don't be scared of that. There is so much beauty in it, because that means that you're learning, you're growing, and you're just becoming the person that you want to be, and that is so freaking awesome, guys. So just it makes me so happy to even imagine that for you guys and to think of that. Okay, so yeah, Um, that was our gentle reflection. I hope that kind of cleared some stuff off of our minds, relax ourselves a bit. Um, in closing, we do have homework. Once again, the homework last week was to honor our boundaries. I hope y'all did that. Just a small little boundary. Like I said, I was able to do that. And even though it was a hard week for me, I am still feeling proud that I was able to honor my boundary of not letting other people's words get to me. So the homework for this week is to just continue to practice self-love. Do another small thing for yourself. Um, do it just by yourself. Okay. I want you to we need to get in the habit of doing that. So the homework, once again, is doing something for yourself, but while maintaining those boundaries being up. Okay. So whether it's you're going out to eat by yourself, make sure you have that boundary up. If somebody comes and tries to sit with you, you're going to be like, no, I don't want you in my space. This is my space. Have those boundaries up. Or maybe the waiter isn't that nice, but you're going to have that boundary up of this isn't going to ruin my day. I'm still going to eat this amazing food. I'm still going to enjoy this time by myself, okay? So practice self-love, practice time by yourself while maintaining those boundaries. All right. So healthy relationships, this is just like something I want to leave y'all with. Healthy relationships require showing up fully, not shrinking or running from it. Okay. So we're done self-sabotaging because healthy relationships deserves showing up. And that's showing up for yourself and that's showing up for the other person in the relationship. Okay. Um, so yes, thank y'all so very much for tuning in. I love you all. Remember, if you just want to stay tuned on like episodes and just more content, please follow my TikTok and my Instagram. I also have a YouTube page. They'll all be listed below in the comments. For the most part, they're just the Heartbreak Chronicles _ You'll find it. So yeah, please follow me, message me y'all stories. I want to hear it because I would love for your story to be on here. Even if you don't want your name to be out there, that's okay. But your story still deserves to be heard. Okay. So yeah, remember you are loved, that you are heard, and that your voices have power. Okay. Thank y'all so very much. And I love y'all. And I'll see y'all next week, next Thursday. So bye.